Hello, I'm taking on a challenge to beat every playable Nintendo published game. The next game is Rygar. Well, it's been a bit, but we're back with another batch of Play Choice 10 games. Just in case you didn't already know, the Play Choice 10 was an arcade machine sold by Nintendo that could play NES games, and a lot of third-party games were advertised and sold directly by Nintendo through this system, meaning they all qualify for the challenge. The third-party game we're taking a look at today is Rygar. Now, unlike most of the Play Choice 10 games up until this point, I can't find any advertisements from Nintendo that even mentioned that Rygar was a game that was available on the Play Choice 10. The only reference I found from any kind of official publication was from a French magazine that listed it as one of the games available on the Play Choice 10. This technically means I'm making an assumption that it was Nintendo who actually sold the game, but since they sold everything else on the Play Choice 10, I think we can safely say they probably sold this one too. So what is Rygar? Who was it made by? Well, this one was created by a company new to the challenge, Tecmo. We'll end up seeing a handful of Tecmo games on the Play Choice 10 in the coming years. Tecmo was founded in 1967, and at first their name was Tecon. They originally focused on selling amusement equipment, and in 1981 they made their first arcade game, a shooter called Pleiades, or Pleiades as it was sometimes called. After a few more years of making arcade titles, they officially changed their name to Tecmo in 1986. One of these early arcade titles was a game called Rygar. In Rygar, you played as a legendary warrior fighting through side-scrolling stages with endless waves of monsters. Eventually, Tecmo decided to bring the game to the NES, although they ended up changing the game quite a bit. They took the completely linear levels and made it into a large interconnected world. Additionally, they added a bunch of upgrades needed to access various areas of the world. That's right, they essentially turned it into a Metroidvania. Honestly, this version is so different from the original arcade game that I have a hard time even considering this just a port. It's more of a reimagining of the arcade title. Years later, the game got an even more drastic reimagining on the PlayStation 2, and that even got a remaster on the Wii. Neither of these will be showing up in the challenge, though. Alright, with all of that history out of the way, let's jump into my time with Rygar. Like many of these old NES games, there's no opening cutscene, you're just thrown straight into the action. So it's time to once again turn to the manual. There was once a holy place called Argul, founded by the 5 Indora gods. However, their peace was disturbed when Argul was attacked by an evil king named Rygar. He led an army of beasts and established the Kingdom of Evil. He also took away something called the Door of Peace, whatever that is. The people turned to an ancient passage that told of a legendary hero being revived to save the peaceful land from persecution. After many prayers, their pleas were answered, and back from the dead rose the hero, Rygar. This hero is who I was playing as, and I started off in a place called the Suru Mountain. Enemies immediately started to swarm me, and I attacked them using Rygar's trusty weapon, the Disc Armor. This is some kind of bladed shield thing that Rygar throws around like a yo-yo. I kind of got wrecked pretty quickly. The bad guys just kept spawning in, and eventually they took me out and knocked me off a cliff at the same time. Ouch, game over already. After respawning, I eventually found a rope hanging from a tree. Up here, I found this random buff old dude who gave me a vague clue on how to find a place called Garlaws at the Grand Mountain. Oh boy, this is gonna be one of those games with obtuse clues, huh? I think the manual says this guy is the legendary god, who I guess isn't one of the 5 Indora gods? I don't know. After using the word the manual then suggested that there are actually a bunch of them too. Anyway, soon after, I found the Grand Mountain he was telling me about. I guess I want to find Garlaws next? There was another room with an old guy, and this one told me to go west and then north once I found Garlaws. After only a bit of climbing, I found Garlaws already. This place had a totally different perspective. It changed from Metroid into Zelda. I wanted to keep exploring the mountain though, so I turned around for now. I guess I should have just listened to the old dude because I ran into a few obstacles that prevented me from going on, like this post or this spot here missing a rope. I did find out that a place called Garba was at the top of the mountain though. Oh, I also got a level up while I was fighting here. My max health increased by 1. Nice, I guess this game has some RPG elements too, huh? Well, with nowhere else to go, it looks like I'm going back to Garlaws after all. Garlaws had a bunch of branching paths all over the place. It's kind of the central hub of the game, as most of the main paths you can follow all connect to here. I tried to farm for another life upgrade to better understand the mechanics, but it just wasn't happening for some reason. I don't think I ever actually figured out how the experience system works while I was playing it. Looking online, the reason I got confused was that the game has 2 different sets of experience. One is called Tone, used for striking power, and the other is called Last, short for lasting power. Different enemies give out different types of experience. After enough tone is gathered, your strength increases, and after enough last is gathered, your health increases. It turns out the guys I was farming here were only giving out tone, so while my strength was increasing, I didn't increase my max health at all. While we're looking at this pause screen, there was also this mind meter. This gets filled up by monster drops, and using this meter, I could do one of 3 special moves. Power Up, which gives you a buff to your weapon until you game over, Attack and Assail, which allows your disc armor to hit everything on screen for the next 10 hits, and Recovery, which refills all of your health. Anyway, back to my playthrough. Following the directions given by that old guy earlier, I found another old guy. He gave me a grappling hook. Nice, first upgrade acquired. This thing allowed me to grab ledges above me. Ah, so that's probably how I climb up that part of Grand Mountain where the rope was missing. I also found another old guy who told me that I needed to find all 5 Endora gods to acquire special powers. As I wandered some more, I found logs with ropes on them, but it didn't seem like I could do anything with them. I guess I'll need another upgrade to use these things. I decided to go back to climb up Grand Mountain using the grappling hook, but all I found was an old guy who asked if I had the coat of arms yet. Very useful. I went back to Garlaws and found a couple of new areas. This place had a gnarly looking dude, so I decided to go to this water place first. This one was called Rolsa, and it had these fish monsters that flew around everywhere. Here, I learned that the grapple can even grab ledges that are off screen. Great, I'm going to have to use that somewhere random, aren't I? Up here, I found an old guy that told me that there was a floating castle somewhere nearby, although he said nothing about how to reach it. Well, as I previously suspected, I had to use the grappling hook to grab onto a bunch of random high ledges, and I eventually found the castle in the background. But an old guy here told me that I needed to meet the 5 Endora gods to access it. Great. So something kind of funny about these screens is that even though I knew there were platforms down below, I had to use my grapple to climb down or else I would get an immediate game over. Eventually, I found my way to an area called Aruga's Forest, and here there were these nasty caterpillar dudes that kept knocking me off into the water. Yeah, I died to them way too much. Seriously, it was a lot. I eventually realized there was a super easy despawn cheese that I could use to get around them. Oh, I despawned him, the cheese. Wait, is that easier to hold on. A guy told me that a monster called Aruga lived somewhere here, and after doing the despawn cheese a bunch, I found him. Aruga was some kind of 2-headed beast with the body of a turtle. For some reason, there was no boss music in this game, which was kind of lame. His attacks did 2 ticks of damage, but he had a pretty simple pattern, and I took him out on my first try. After him was an old guy with an upgrade, but I grabbed it so fast I missed his message and I didn't even get to hear what it was. The manual calls it the wind pulley, and it's what I needed to get past those pegs with the rope. Unfortunately, it's kind of jank. It was super easy to just run off into the water by mistake. Whoops. Yeah, this happened to me a couple of times before I realized where you actually latch on. Using this, I discovered an island down to the southwest, and here I found another new area, as well as an old guy who said that the Palace of Dorago was above the island. Too bad I can't reach it yet. I decided to go back to one of those early places I found, and this area was called Regua Sando. It wasn't all that large, but it spammed enemies at me like crazy. Past it was an area called Lapis, with a bunch of floating sky islands. Oh look, a random spot where I had to grapple. There was this kind of crazy robot enemy up here, and unfortunately, I found another one of those pegs like the one I saw back at Grand Mountain. Apparently, I needed the crossbow to continue. I guess I'm going back to that new area I found down to the southwest. This place was called Primeval Mountain, and it had more of those annoying flying enemies that drop eggs. After fighting my way through this area, I found a large cave called the Den of Sigilla. This place was super amazing and confusing, and the old guys here gave pretty lame hints. After a while though, I found the next boss, a spider named Sigilla. This fight was kind of hectic, but I was able to just tank my way through it. Back here was another item that I grabbed way too quickly by mistake. This was finally the crossbow, which I could use to create ropes at those lone pegs I saw earlier. First, I decided to go back to Grand Mountain to see if I could find Garba. I used the crossbow to access a new area, and back here was some kind of tower. I guess this must be Garba. In here, I found this weird snail guy that was basically just a reskin of the first boss, although this cramped room made it so much harder. I kept dying to the guy before I developed a strat where I constantly bounced on his shell to dodge his attacks. Phew, I still barely made it though. Then I found even more snails.
Oh my goodness, this is snail heaven.
Well, the previous snail did stay dead on a game over, but I had a feeling I was just not quite ready for this place yet. Instead, I decided to go back to the southwestern island to see if I could use my crossbow at a peg there. It's not coming out. Weird, this really looks like a spot where it should work. I guess I need something else? I decided to just go back to Lapis instead, and by using the crossbow, I accessed more to the floating islands. After fighting my way through like a million robots, I found the next boss. Places online call him Belzar, although this old guy seems to suggest his name was also just Lapis? I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell if he's talking about the boss or the area. This thing was a weird creature with 2 eyes that occasionally shot beams at me. I just climbed up next to him and spammed attacks and he went down with ease. Back here, I finally didn't immediately grab the item. Oh, these guys actually look different. I think these are the Endora gods I've heard so much about. The item here was the coat of arms, and all this actually does is that all of the old guys in the world that previously mentioned the coat of arms now give you a potion when you visit them. This potion can be used to refill health. Well, I guess all I've got left is Snail Heaven. I was already a bit stronger at this point, so the snail started to go down pretty fast. After climbing a rope, I found this wild enemy that looked like some kind of dinosaur riding a tank. He zoomed around the room like crazy. At the end was a boss named Death Pygor, and this was another two-headed beast that shot attacks out at me. Wow, they really like these two-headed monsters, huh? After him was another Endora god, and he gave me a flute. Well, I was pretty sure I needed to use this to access that floating castle I saw earlier, but it just didn't work for some reason. I guess I have only found 4 out of the 5 Endora gods so far. Maybe I need to find the last one? Man, I actually got stuck here for a really long time. The only places I could think of were the floating castle and the peg on the southwest island, but no matter what I did, I couldn't figure out how to go forward in either of these locations. After going back and forth a few times, I finally figured it out, and it was pretty stupid. It turns out that I just wasn't standing in the exact right spot to activate the crossbow at the southwest island. Yes, it was that simple. Up here was a place called the Palace of Dorago. To my surprise, it was another top-down area. This was a big dungeon with enemies all over the place, and a few more of those particular spots where I had to shoot the crossbow to get across gaps. Okay, these hints are getting even more useless. After a bunch more monsters, I reached the boss, Dorago. Wow, these bosses are honestly kind of easy. After this, I found the last of the 5 Endora gods, and he gave me the Endora suit of armor. This thing boosts your defense. Okay, so that doesn't actually give me any new traversal moves, but maybe since I found all 5 Endora gods, I can access that castle in the sky now? Well, it turns out I was right. Despite being called the Flute of the Pegasus by the manual, playing the flute caused no such creature to appear, and instead a random door popped in. Very cool looking. This led to the final dungeon. This place was a big maze with a ton of these shadow dudes everywhere. They hit kind of hard, and there were so many of them that I just decided to run past them all. I ended up having to use my heal power here, and since I had a feeling the final boss was near, I was worried that I was spending too many of my resources already. Thankfully, I got to the end without getting hit anymore, and I found the final boss, Rygar himself. Now, despite how easy most of the bosses were in this game, this one was a lot more hectic. He just stood in the corner and shot attacks everywhere, and they did a ton of damage. He's not exactly a two-headed monster this time, but he is holding 2 dragon heads or something that shoot out fireballs. I ended up using my potion on him, but then I was out of resources and I still ended up losing. Dang. There's a save before the boss, but it only starts you with 3 health, and with no potions or heal moves, it was pretty much hopeless. I tried a couple of times, but yeah, this wasn't happening. Time to make the trek back to get another potion and fill up my mind meter. I grinded up my mind meter on some dudes back at Garlaw's and challenged the final dungeon again. I got through with pretty much all of my resources intact, so hopefully I can make it this time. At this point, I was a bit better at dodging Rygar's moves too, and after only using one of my 2 life refills, he went down. Wow, that ended up being a lot harder than any of the other bosses in the game. Once I beat him, a random door opened up in the back. Oh, this must be that Door of Peace mentioned by the manual. Then, after a shot of the peaceful scenery behind the door, some text appeared telling me that peace had been restored to Argul and my character returned to some place called Argus. With that, Rygar was complete. On to the review. I thought this one was pretty neat. These exploration-heavy action games are some of my favorite on the NES, and this one is no exception. It's got a fun world to explore, and while it's nothing too complex, I always knew where there was a path to go forward. There's some pretty nice looking areas you find too, which help them stand out from each other. Even the time where I got really stuck was more because of the janky crossbow and not because I didn't know where to go. The combat works well enough, and the yo-yo disc weapon is definitely a unique one. That being said, the bosses weren't that interesting. They never really found a good balance between making the bosses challenging enough, but also giving them a moveset that was fun to dodge. I kind of just face tanked most of them. All in all, it's a fun game that I would place close to many of the other exploration-heavy NES games I've played in the challenge so far. That being said, the weak bosses and occasional janks sort of hold it back from making me like it quite as much as games like Fall Xanadu, The Guardian Legend, and the Battle of Olympus. Still, Rygar just barely squeezes by with an 8 out of 10. With Rygar complete, I have now finished 83 out of the 155 NES games in the challenge, meaning I am now 53.55% of the way through all of the NES games. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more of these in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss out on the next one. Also leave a like if you enjoyed it, since it will help the channel grow and motivate me to continue this series. I hope I will see you in the next step of my quest to beat every Nintendo game.